Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about sprint reviews. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, in your software engineering team, how do you get stakeholders to attend your sprint reviews? Well, uh, usually the way it goes is that the software developers, they don't give a shit, and the product owner tries to uh, convince everyone to join, invites as many people as possible, and tries to make it a personal interaction with the stakeholders. And if they're lucky, they have stakeholders who care enough about them, usually not about the work, but about them, so that they will come to the feel like they should join the sprint review meeting. And then it's usually a whole bunch of wasted time for the people who don't have a ongoing story or something that is happening within the sprint that you are delivering on that they care about. And usually these people are already informed of how things have gone through organic means, because that's what usually happens when you talk to people, which I thought was a very obvious thing to a lot of people. But then I went to a company up in North America and met the software developer teams there, and that specific company, they never did this. They had a rule for everything. Everything was your Jira tickets. Every conversation happened through through emails and things like that. They never actually talked to each other whatsoever, which I thought was kind of strange when you're supposed to work as a team. But there you go. So maybe some people don't do this. Personally, I think that the sprint review is a ridiculous notion that is used, as I've said. It's usually not about you. It is about your product owner or your team showcasing, or like trying to in some fashion show that we've done something valuable, or this is how things went. This is how we have produced things, like this is our reflections on the work and like how things have gone and so forth and so forth. And as I said, the 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 software team very rarely gives a shit about this, because it's not for them, which is the thing that is so odd about the whole concept. Because depending on how you do this thing, and I don't want someone who is a Scrum Master now to come and tell me what this means and what it may be. There's a rules for everything in Scrum. Yes, there are rules for everything in Scrum. The reality is a very different story from what your rulebook is saying, such as safe, etc., etc. I've never ever met a company, not a single one, in all the years I've worked, where everybody could very definitively explain to me how safe works or how to do it according to all the rules. I have worked with Scrum Masters who are religious about the work, and they can still not get this thing to ever actually work. Because the problem is that when you put people in a conversation, the conversation is organic. And if you don't understand that, then you've never had a conversation in a stand-up or anything like that that has transitioned into a conversation about features or bugs or the implementation details, etc., etc. And in polite conversation, you don't just stop people from talking in those circumstances. You allow the conversation to flow freely because people are expressing themselves, which is contradictory to having a meeting that has a very narrow scope all the time, where you still touch upon those sort of issues, which is sort of the whole issue, the whole problem. So what I tell people is that rather than having this idea that the sprint review should be valuable for your stakeholders, take the same approach as if you were deciding to become fit. Because some people, this is what people do. People who want to get into shape, they tie themselves to some friend or something like that and say, we're going to go together. And then they mentally commit to the other person rather than being fit themselves. And so when the other person loses interest, what happens is that they stop as well. Because now it's now their friend is not doing it, so why should they do it? Well, because you're doing it for you. Are you going to be fat because your friends are fat, or like, how are you going to deal with this? So my suggestion is that you do the thing that you should be doing, and that is to focus on what is valuable for your team. Because if there is a reason for people to jump into your sprint reviews, they will be there. And I am pretty sure, I've never seen this fail. I have never seen a team focus on their own process, build a process that works for them, that makes them productive, that actually, has a value to them, fail when it comes to their stakeholders. Because all that's going to happen is that your stakeholders are going to stop caring, which is only something that the product owner cares about. And the only reason they usually care about it is because of them. Because they have a career and their job depends on this thing. Their perceived value and success as an individual, that is the thing that is in the focus. And that is what Scrum is. That is the whole reason why you have Agile coaches and you have Scrum Masters. Their entire deal is literally that they are dealing with people who they have to convince that they have to sell Scrum as a useful concept. And the only companies who actually believe that are incompetent. It's actually that simple. You think that they are teaching you something that is somehow so, that it's somehow improving things, but the reality is that they're there to bridge incompetence within the team itself, which is what I tell people, that the average software developer, the average senior software developer who has worked for any amount of time will have the necessary skill sets to run the whole show. There is no reason for you to follow these sorts of practices because most of the workflows are based on other things. But you do these sorts of meetings because it's basically tradition. It's basically just going through the motions. And most people attend these meetings because of the same reasons. Because all the important conversations are happening on instant messaging, emails, etc., etc. They've already happened. The entire sprint review is usually just a way for you to touch base with people who are not in the communication channel to begin with. And what I tell people is that if you want to reach those people, rather than organizing your entire work process around them, you should focus on having a really effective work process that works for you. And then you can include them through a newsletter or an email or something like that. It's very simple. You can even make it just a public thing. You can write a little article saying that, hey, yeah, we built this and the team found this thing. For more information, we can talk. And I challenge you to find me a situation where that doesn't work. The only time that's going to fail, I can promise you, is if you have someone who has, as I said, a vested interest in that you follow these practices, which is I've only seen that in the most diehard religious Scrum Masters or people who are consultants who make money from the fact that you follow their doctrine because Agile is like a holy book for most people. They don't actually work. These techniques, there are some of them that are actually very useful, but the steroid thing that is happening right now is no different from waterfall or some other mental mechanism that you create on paper, which they claim, of course, that they have a lot of data that it works, etc., etc. Which is that's the whole sales pitch. It's just another holy doctrine. But if you actually look at what produces results, there are techniques that are more efficient than you trying to get your stakeholders to attend the sprint review. Because the fundamental thing you should be asking yourself, why are you convincing people? Why do you need to convince them to come to the meeting if it's so useful? Because if they don't give a shit, why are you trying to pitch to other people to come to your sprint review? So what I want you to take away from this is that if you have meetings where other people are allowed to come and be part of your reviews or like whatever you're doing, then you have a meeting for someone else. And logic would dictate, if they are not usually interested in coming and you literally have no benefit, because there is no real benefit to the team from having a sprint review. Nothing is gained from having the Scrum, this idea. There are meetings that you can create. You can absolutely have a lot of different useful meetings, but this in of itself has no value. It all depends on execution. As I said, it really depends on you. How do you structure things, and so forth and so forth. But if you're following this and you're doing it because it allows other people to take part of what's going on in your team and nobody's showing up, then stop having the meeting. Why the fuck do you have it? There is, as I said, really in my experience, only one situation when this happens, and that is when there is someone else who is not the software team, who is not the stakeholders, who is not the people who are making, like, the users or anything like that. There's only one person who gains from this, and that is the consultant, that is the Scrum Master, or the incompetent hire manager who is also sold on SAFe, who has a doctrine where you're supposed to be using all of these practices, and they, once again, they are either a religious fanatic, they have the same sort of mindset, or they have some incentive for making things work in accordance with their worldview. Even though that worldview is wrong, it doesn't work, and it produces no value. And now we're in the region of tradition, religious, like repetition, and going through the motions. And that is what usually happens when you follow SAFe and so forth and so forth. Most of these sorts of systems, they all come down to the same thing. Either they are actually useful to you, or you're just doing them for the sake of doing them. Have a great day.